two major bills that could redefine parental rights and medical access in Washington state. Senate Joint Report 8204 and Senate Bill 5181, plus estate taxes, election security, recycling, fees, tariffs, and local events, and more today on the Evergreen Report. I'm your host, Jay. Let's jump right in. Washington state policies affect your safety, your taxes, and your families. Whether you pay attention or not, here, I want to make sure you do. This is your Evergreen Report, where we expose the impact of our local government so you can take action. All right, well, everybody, welcome in. Super excited to be with you today on our 6th episode of the Evergreen Report, and we're going to try to get a little bit more local. But of course, I would not be doing Washington state justice, and I would not be a supporter of parental rights if I didn't start right here. Two huge stories that I have to talk about. First one, Senate Joint Report 8204, Abortion and Gender-Affirming Care Constitutional Amendment. This one's a heavy one, so buckle up because we are going to break this one down. Because it's honestly disgusting. It's honestly really sad, and I don't love it. And there's a lot of outrage about this. So it would add abortion and gender-affirming care as constitutional right in Washington state. Yes, you heard that right. They would become constitutional right. Abortion is already protected here in Washington state, so nothing really to change there. But the gender-affirming care here is a sneaky little line that was snuck in at the bottom by state Democrats on this joint resolution here. So it adds a constitutional amendment to guarantee the right to abortion and gender-affirming care in Washington state. It prohibits the state from denying or interfering with these medical procedures. Who is impacted? Well, let me tell you, medical providers who will be required to offer gender-affirming care and abortion services regardless of personal or religious objectives. So if a provider doesn't agree with the gender-affirming care, if they are Christian, if they are of a religion, a sect, or just their own personal belief that abortion or gender-affirming care is wrong or shouldn't happen or anything like that, it's fine. They have to comply. Also, with this abortion point, this protects abortion up into the 9th month. I'm pro-choice, but I'm not pro-choice up until the 9th month. I'm pro-choice 9 weeks, 12 weeks, but man, it's hard. I'm barely pro-choice up until, the first ultrasound, when the baby starts to develop a heartbeat and moms hear that heartbeat for the first time at that first ultrasound. I think it's 7 weeks, I believe. So that's as earliest as I'm willing, but it's also about as late as I'm willing, because 12 months, you're already a third of the way through. It's really hard. Of course, abortion is not called abortion. It's actually a medical procedure. When it's for life of the mother, life of the child, illness, or something else, it's actually called something different. There's actual different medical terms for all that, believe it or not. So it's just called abortion because that's what gets the people going. But no, this amendment protects abortion up into the 9th month, which is disgusting, which is so bad. Like, that's so wrong. I can never imagine, either of my children. I'm a man, yes, but I can never imagine either of my children being aborted in their 9th month when there's a whole baby there. You're just ripping them out, killing them, essentially euthanizing babies. It's really disgusting. Or even those later, that last third of that last trimester of pregnancy. I can't imagine that. But yeah, that's what they're trying to do. But it adds a constitutional amendment to guarantee the right to abortion and to gender-affirming care in Washington state. And it prohibits the state from denying or interfering with these medical procedures, which is so bad. Minors and young adults are so impacted by this, who may have increased access to these services without parental consent. Jamie Peterson, I know this is coming from you, man. Jamie Peterson, you need to come on my podcast, because I am calling you out here, sir. You're not in my district. You're not my representative. You're no one to me, except for a child groomer, a predator, and a pervert. And I'll tell it to your face. I want to hear you defend your position on this stuff. The stuff you said in the media, that if a 13-year-old girl gets pregnant and she's old enough to have sex, or she's old enough to menstruate, she's old enough to choose for herself to have an abortion. What is wrong with you? Get away from our kids. But Jamie Peterson, seriously, I want you on the podcast. And also an open invitation to my local representatives, Stephanie Bernard, Matt Bonke, and April Connor. Especially you, April, if you ever hear this, you are invited on to the Evergreen Report whenever, however you want. And also my boy Isaac Hoyek, who is also going to be running here to unseat some of our Democrats. We need good leaders like Isaac who are just fired up and ready to fight for you and for me. Anyways, I digress here. Without parental consent, deep breath. I'm a parent. I have 2 daughters. I want them to have access to this care, yes, but it is not okay if they can go through some roundabout way to say, "I want this, and you can't tell my parents," and I don't get told about it until they come home now on puberty blockers, hormone replacements, or they're going through these things without me being told. That is unacceptable in my eyes. That is wrong. That is just morally wrong. And if you disagree, I also want you to come on the podcast. I want to tell me why you disagree with that. I guarantee we can find a middle ground here, agree to disagree, why it's wrong, why, and talk about that a little bit more in depth. So I would love to talk about that. My argument for it is that's your kid. Are you the primary stakeholder in your life, or are medical professionals and the state and the education system? Are they the primary stakeholders in your life, or are you? Do you want to make sure your kid has proper knowledge and informed consent about this, or do you want them to be getting pushed by some agenda-based professional or some agenda-based teacher or someone in their lives that will be supportive of that and take it and run with it because it fits their personal agenda? That all kids should be trans or all kids should be something. Yeah, it's crazy. It's scary, but something to think about. Religious organizations and conscience-based medical institutions who may lose protections against providing these services. Again, it will be required. It will be required. And here in the Evergreen Report, I really do try to stay bipartisan on a lot of things, but I am right of center leaning. Some things I will be very center on, some things I will be very right, some things I will be very far right. This is one of those things that I am without a doubt very right on. How this is going to be funded is it's going to come from the state healthcare fund. They may be redirected to support expanded access to these services, and of course, you guessed it, possible tax increases to cover the cost of making these rights enforceable under the state constitution. Yes! Love that. More taxes for stuff that many of us do not agree with. Hidden or overlooked provisions. This amendment eliminates any state-level restrictions on abortion or gender-affirming care, making it harder to regulate these medical services in the future. It eliminates state-level restrictions on abortion. It could override parental rights, it will, allowing minors to undergo gender-affirming treatment or abortions without parental knowledge. And that's why it's so important for us to have a relationship with our kids, be present in our kids' lives, do everything we can, be good moms, be good dads, especially you dads, especially in our daughter's life, so that they're not at the risk of having a teenage pregnancy, having an abortion as a teenager, feel like they have to hide these things from you. Our kids should absolutely feel we have to get present again, parents, and they should absolutely feel like, oh yeah, I fucked up, messed up, sorry. I can go to mom and dad for support. They're gonna support me through this. They're gonna help me make the right decision, help me make an informed decision, and that's most important. But this is so bad. It's disgusting. Religious and conscious religious and conscious protections could be weakened, forcing hospitals and doctors to provide services they may normally oppose. And then, let's do a common sense breakdown of this. Pro protects abortion and gender affirming care from future political changes. How it is right now is fine. Gender affirming care is not a thing that it's a political based thing. It's based in politics and it needs to die with politics. This is definitely not okay. Weakens parental involvement in religious freedom protections, because why strengthen religious freedoms and protections, and why strengthen parent and parental rights when you can, just find every single way to dismantle them. That's what that thinking there is. Common sense breakdown. Making abortions and gender affirming care a constitutional right removes all safeguards and regulations. This is extreme, even for pro-choice individuals. Yeah, if you make it a constitutional right, it is extreme, even for pro-choice individuals like myself. Like, I am pro-choice, especially if someone's pregnant by rape, incest, or life of the mother. Definitely something as well that needs to be considered in these situations. But also, when it's just a choice up and until the 9th month, that is just no. You can't. That's not okay. It's not okay. The bill ignores parental rights, giving schools and medical providers full control over children's healthcare decisions. Again, that is my biggest argument. Who is a primary stakeholder in your kid's life? And I want you to think about this. The answer is pretty obvious. If you're listening to this and you're a parent, you are the answer to that question. Do you want schools and medical providers to have full control over your child's healthcare and their decisions? A school system that is already broken when they should be worrying about writing, math, reading, writing, arithmetic, things like that. When our scores are plummeting, our literacy rates are down, our math scores are down, all of our education scores are down, yet we spend one of the highest per pupil in the United States. We have a 110% increase since 2019 in student funding. What are we doing? What are we doing? Because why is this something that schools need to worry about? It's not their place. It's not their place at all. Why prioritize this as a constitutional amendment? Well, instead of debating real issues like crime, inflation, and education, lawmakers are focusing on making irreversible medical procedures for minors a right. Again, irreversible. 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 If your 13-year-old decides, hey, I want to go do this, 8-year-old, that's a life-changing decision that they were 8 years old and they could have been fed information, groomed in one way, shape, or form, and then they go and do this life-changing decision. They decide when they're 22 years old, oh my gosh, I really want kids. Guess what? I'm chemically castrated. I had a mutilation happen to me when I was 8 years old because of this woke agenda of Democrats. Now I can't have children, and that's something I really wanted and dreamed of, and now that's not going to happen to me. Granted, you can adopt and things like that, but it's not the same as actually having your own children. It's the most beautiful thing. So yeah, not right. Not right. But yeah, that's where I wanted to start. So we spent about 10 minutes on that. That's totally okay. Because now I want to jump into Senate Bill 5181. Our parental rights rollback removes parental notification for non-emergency medical services at school. Parents wouldn't have to be informed if their child receives gender-affirming care, mental health services, or other treatments at school. Expands student right to privacy, preventing schools from disclosing medical info. This, again, is so wrong. It's so wrong. Like, why are you trying to take parents out of the kids' lives? Like, what? Washington State Democrat, what do you want with our children? Seriously, what do you want with our children? Because it does not make sense to the average person. What do you want with our kids? Leave our freaking kids alone. Like I said just now, it takes away from them actually focusing on education, not medical decisions. And why would they debate real issues like crime, inflation, education, when they can debate over something like this? When they can focus on stripping rights away from parents. After we fought so hard in the last legislature cycle to have the parental bill of rights. Let's strip that away. Let's strip that away. Yes, it went through, got signed into law. It's great. But let's strip that away. One piece at a time. Parents, they don't actually need their right. We control the kids. We control all these things, not you, the parents. So what the bill's done, it modifies the parental rights, reducing the right of parents regarding notification of medical services for their children. It removes the requirement that schools notify parents when providing non-emergency medical services, such as gender-affirming care or mental health treatment. And also, if your student is assaulted, if they are sexually assaulted and things like that, it will also not make that important, where they could have up to 48 hours, if at all, to report it to you, if at all. They won't do anything. It puts way too much protection on the weird teachers out there, because we have way too many reports in the Washington state of teachers who are predators towards our children. It's disgusting. It expands student privacy rights, meaning students can withhold information to parents in certain situations. No, nothing that happens at school should be off limits to a parent. Nothing at all. Zero, zilp, not a none. None of that's off limits to a parent. I can know every single thing that's happening in that classroom, happening in that school, every single step my student takes, every single step my kids take, every single thing they do, say, eat, breathe. I can know that 100% without a doubt. That's how it should be, and that's exactly what it needs to get to. Not less, more access. They're kids. They're kids. I'm sorry, our kids are entitled to a certain level of privacy and boundaries and whatnot, but when it comes to their schooling, when it comes to their education, when it comes to things going on, when it comes to the curriculum, things being taught, when it comes to them getting non-emergency medical services, gender-affirming care, or asking for healthcare treatment, that is absolutely something that I, as a parent, need to be informed of right away. It should be a 0.1 second phone call home saying, hey, they're here right now, trying to talk about this. Do you want to come in and talk to them? We can help you support this conversation. Schools need to be supportive of the parents and their choices and their beliefs and their values versus trying to push their own agendas on the students and the families. I'm sorry if, like I've said on this podcast before, you have a certain amount of privacy, which is very little up until you're 18. Of course, you're going to have your body privacy. You're going to have those things like that and whatnot. But if you're under my roof, your life is my life, right? I've spent the last 18 years raising you. You're a part of my life. I'm a part of your life, whether you like it or not. I'm present. I'm involved. I'm going to know every single thing that's going on with you, whether you want to tell me or not. I'm going to get it out of you one way or another. You can call that controlling. You can call that bad parenting, whatever you want to say. But there's no secret. There are no secrets. These are not secrets that should be kept from parents whatsoever. So who's impacted the most? Parents. Parents are the number one population impacted by this. We lose transparency about our kids' health and their well-being. Students receiving medical or physiological or psychological care at school, as parents may be unaware of treatments being provided. They could be giving your kids SSRIs. They could be giving your kids Antipsychotics, they could be giving your kids mood stabilizer. Who knows what they're giving them? They could be giving them medications without you even knowing. They could be telling them they're bipolar or, anything like this and doing these assessments and doing these diagnoses that you may never know of, and whatnot. So you never know. Schools and healthcare providers, as they gain more discretion over a minor's medical decisions, no. Schools and healthcare providers, no. You are not the primary stakeholders in my life. You see these kids for a limited amount of time each day. The rest of the day, they're at home with me. They're at home with their parents. You are not the primary stakeholders. You do not get to have this discretion over my child's life in no way, shape, or form. That is not your responsibility. Your job as a teacher is to teach. Is to teach. Look at our math scores, look at our reading scores, look at how far we've declined while spending has gone up. Where is that money going? How is it actually being spent? What improvements are being made? Because it looks like we're making zero to none, and that money is just going to lining some politicians' pockets. Straight up. How this is funded, there's no direct funding changes, but the state-funded schools and clinics are allowed to provide services without parental consent. Terrible. Hidden or overlooked provisions of this, students' privacy rights expanded beyond just medical issues. This could lead to schools withholding academic or disciplinary records from parents. A lack of parental oversight creates a risk. What if a student is misdiagnosed or prescribed medication without a parent's knowledge? And then it starts to create more issues at home because a parent didn't know they were even prescribed and taking this medication because they only take it at school. They get it at school and nobody has to tell them. Bad. And the biggest kicker here, potential for abuse. This bill may prevent parents from knowing if their child is being influenced or manipulated by an activist, teacher, or counselor, or even being assaulted by a teacher, sexually, emotionally, physically, mentally, being assaulted by these people and abused by them in any way, shape, or form. Could prevent us from knowing all that. Do you really want to go about every single day sending your kid to school worrying about, okay, are they going to get hurt today? They could, but am I going to be informed if they actually hurt? What if that teacher raped my child? They're not going to tell me. It allows so much power for these teachers to get away with hurting our kids in so many ways, shapes, and forms, and then creating this weird power dynamic that where they think they're more powerful than us as parents, and they are the parent when they're not the parent, and they can do whatever they want and how they want to do it, and it's a slippery slope, man. It's a slippery slope. Common sense breakdown. Let's break this down with some common sense here. A parent should be involved in their child's medical care. Schools should not act as medical providers without parental consent. Even with consent, they shouldn't act as medical providers. Their job, if they need to act as a medical provider, is to say, hey, it's time for your medication. Come down to the office and get it, drink some water, and go back to class. And I'll be scraped knee, throwing up, feeling sick. Okay. That's as much as we do. Serious injuries, things like that, notify the parents immediately, get them safe, get them stable, get them in a situation to where they can be okay until the parent can transport them to the next mode of medical care. While privacy rights are important, this bill goes too far in keeping parents in the dark about their own children. Again, too far. Schools should focus on education, not medical decisions. Parents should decide on their child's healthcare, not government officials. Teachers can't love your kids the same way you can love them. Teachers aren't going to be there the same way that you are. You are their parent. You are the primary stakeholder. Step up, fight back. You can go and oppose both of these very easily at wa.ledge.gov. Type in 8204 5151, hit oppose, and yeah, make your voice heard. Please call your senator, call whoever, call, text, email, all the things. Right? Oppose, make your voice heard. Be loud, be proud. Okay, well, we're finally into the Evergreen Ledger legislative roundup. That was an intense little segment there, but that's okay. That's okay. I will probably break that down and make that into its own video over on YouTube, so please make sure to check that out. The Evergreen Ledger. So House Bill 2019. So one thing I don't think I've shared on this podcast or any podcast I've ever done is I used to work with people who were handling their deceased loved ones' estate. And it's already a mess. It's already complicated. But guess what? Let's make it more complicated, says House Bill 2019. Increases the estate tax exclusion amount to $3 million for individuals who die on or after January 1st, 2025. It raises estate tax rates as a taxable estate over $3 million. Updates the Consumer Price Index (CPI) reference to adjust the exclusion amount for inflation. Wealthier families and business owners are most impacted, who may pass down estates over $3 million. Family-owned businesses and farms, as estates including these, could be taxed as a higher rate. Middle-class families with generational wealth who could also be impacted if property values continue rising and estates become more taxable over time. Again, it just creates it more and more. Creates that gap. makes it harder in this estate planning. The estate tax rates increased dramatically with a new top rate of 38% on taxable estates over 9 million. The state uses this revenue for education, allegedly, but there's no guarantee it will improve schools or lower tuition costs. Again, we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. We have the money to spend to increase spending in schools 110% over the last 5 years, yet the results are the opposite of that spending. It could create unintended consequences, such as driving wealthier residents out of Washington to avoid taxes. And let's just break this down common sense. The state taxes mostly affect the wealthy, but inflation could eventually impact middle class families as home values rise. Family businesses and farms could be hit the hardest. Higher taxes could force liquidation of family assets to cover the tax bill. If the government is raising, so again, let's say there is a successful small business that is making over $3 million a year, right? The head of that business, the CEO, dies, and now that's left to the next person in the estate, and now they have this huge tax burden to deal with, and they're like, "Whoa, how am I supposed to pay this?" And now that business now closed, which could have been a staple of the neighborhood, family business for many generations. Now it's gone. Uh, and then corporate America comes in, swoops in, takes over that, and now we got more corporate chain, less small business, less farms, right? Big ag takes over. If the government is raising estate taxes for education, then voters should demand proof that these funds actually improve schools. We should 1000% demand proof. No ifs, ands, or buts. The second bill here in the Evergreen Legislative Roundup is Senate Bill. Move on to a new segment, the local limelight. So I live in Benton in Franklin County. And so I wanted to take more time on this podcast to talk about things going on locally, specifically to me. I spend a lot of time covering the things going on for the state level, and I want to pare it down even more specific to the local level. So, starting at the top here, the Benton Franklin Fair announces two major artists for this year's fair. Sir Mix-a-Lot is one of them, and who is the other one that's coming? Let me see here. There's two artists. Sir Mix-a-Lot's one of them I remember for the fair, and that was Smash Mouth. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get your game on. Go play. They'll be performing at the fair on Friday, August 22nd. So that should be a great night for you Smash Mouth fans and you Sir Mix-a-Lot fans to, kick it back to some 90s nostalgia and go and enjoy the fair with your loved ones. The Benton Franklin Fair is one of my favorite times of the year. I love the fair. It's so much fun. Good time. And it's great for local businesses. It's great for tourism. It's great for hotels. It's great for restaurants. It's great for just local business here in the Tri-Cities. Uh, Fair is so much fun. So yeah, it's huge. It's so fun. Sir Mix-a-Lot and Smash Mouth. Come on now, you don't get much better than that. I know there are two keynote performances every night during the fair, at least on the weekend. So those are the bigger days where we get some bigger artists. So it can be really fun. It'll be a really good time. The Tri-Cities Ironman 70.3 voted top 5 in North America. So this is huge because Ironman competitions are huge. So it's one of the top 5 in North America. So it brings thousands of athletes, spectators, giving the region national recognition. It can bring millions in tourism, and it helps position the Tri-Cities as a top sports destination. A common sense takeaway here is it's just a big win. The more national events we host, the better for the economy and the local economy, local businesses, and everything like that. Local farmer reacts to new tariffs imposed on imported agricultural products. The concern is the retaliatory tariffs from other countries could hurt local exports. Local impact farmers worry about higher costs for machinery and fertilizers. If tariffs lead to trade wars, Washington farmers could lose major export markets, which again sets up for big ag to come in and maybe sweep up some of these farmlands because it's hard to afford the fertilizer. Or we have to find more traditional ways of maintaining it without the chemicals and the fertilizer, things like that, which could be really, really good. And then also think local products sourced here in America. If we can get more American-made things for our American-made food, could be even better. If tariffs lead to trade wars, our farmers could be at risk. Tariffs are a double-edged sword. So let's fact check this. Tariffs are a double-edged sword. They protect U.S. industries, but also risk higher prices and trade retaliation. The Biden administration recently imposed tariffs on China in response to unfair trade practices, but this has caused friction with allies. Trump is also putting in more tariffs. He loves the word tariffs. He loves to use tariffs. So they're going on Mexico, Canada, China, and a lot of them are reciprocal tariffs because we have been getting penny pinched from a lot of our allies, and fair trade partners for a long time to where we're paying a lot more on our imports and we're getting tariffs a lot more than they're getting tariffed. And so it's just to equal things out. Like we've been paying you for way too long. Let's also get paid for the same thing that we're offering you. So expect disruption, expect that to have some kind of consequence here. So, what is this all about? So, considering House Bill 1607, which would introduce a 10% deposit on beverage containers, the idea is to encourage recycling, but critics say it's just another hidden tax. Some claim the real goal is to generate state revenue from unclaimed deposits rather than improving recycling. Local impact, higher costs for consumers. People will have to pay more upfront for drinks. Stores will have to change their system to handle bottle returns, and no clear evidence this will improve recycling rates based on similar programs in other states. One state I do know this is really successful in is the buyback is Hawaii, to where you can make a good amount of change returning your bottles and your cans and getting those back. You can get a lot. You can make a good little amount of side change, right? And so something very common there from when I lived there. But local impacts is that there's no clear evidence that it'll actually work. Common sense takeaways: if Washington wants better recycling, why not invest in existing waste management programs instead of forcing consumers to pay more? Wow, what an idea. Let's, focus on improving and investing in what we already got instead of forcing more taxes down our throats. Wow. That'd be amazing. One thing I did want to mention here, as well as talking about taxes, is Patty Murray back on what date was this? This was good. Senator Murray is one of our state senators here from Washington State, February 28th. So this is fairly recent. So this is about a week old. How on the House budget, how are they ever going to explain that to the folks back home? Well, Patty Murray, we know you are not going to. Patty Murray, you are also invited on this podcast, Miss Halitosh's Queen. You always are looking sad, depressed, and even Bill Maher called you out. Come on now. Patty Murray is a career politician, and as career politicians do, especially Democratic ones, they love Project Mockingbird. So what is this all about? So she criticized the House Republican budget proposal, saying it hurts working families and cuts key programs. Republicans argues that the budget reins in government spending to control inflation. Local impact could mean changes to funding for schools, transportation, and healthcare in Washington, which, yeah, it will, because we are not following federal law for some of the things that we need to be following federal law for. Federal spending cuts could impact local projects and social programs. Could, could. Let's fact check this. The House GOP budget does not cut Social Security or Medicare, as some claim. It makes the requirements for accessing those a bit harder and more strict. Some funding is redirected, but much of it is to reduce the deficit, which helps fight inflation. So we'll see that pay off in time. It's not going to come right away. It's not going to come in the short term. It'll come in eventually, but it will come. Common sense takeaway: Washington D.C., much like Washington State, has a spending problem. We have spending problem in a lot of blue states with these massive billions of dollars in budget deficit. The budget This budget tries to rein it in a little bit, but both sides need to be honest about what's being cut. 100% transparency on both sides. I did a really, really long breakdown of this. Actually, there was this feature on ChatGPT, and I had it go through and I had it break down the budget and go through a bunch of these elements. And I won't bore you with all that, but it was really, really interesting. Let me see if I can find it here. Here we go. House budget bill detail. So I had to break down. It checked 40 something different sources for this bill. I had to use the deep research feature. Yeah, there's just so much to this budget bill. Like, it was a crazy amount. But let's just check the facts here. Cuts to Social Security and Medicare is false. Eliminating major programs, general safety net, misleading. There's some truth that it mandates deep reductions to programs like Medicaid and SNAP, which could drop millions from eligibility, but it changes the eligibility requirement. If true, the plan seeks about $2 trillion in savings, largely from healthcare and food assistance, which by definition means less support for those programs. However, these programs are not being abolished outright. So phrases like gutting or destroying, these are political hyperbole. when there's really just like a scaling back and making sure that there's requirements. So Democrats are rightly highlighting the risk of social programs, but in doing so, some have overstated by implying those programs would vanish entirely. Veterans as a piggy bank claim, which was made by Representative Mark Tancano from California, lambasted the budget as an abomination that uses veterans as a piggy bank to pay for billionaire tax break. He cited that 9 million veterans on Medicaid and 1+ million on SNAP could be hurt by cuts. Fact check: Takano's numbers on veterans relying on those programs are credible. Many low-income do rely on it. However, it's not a targeted cut at veterans. It's a side effect of broader cuts. As noted, there were no explicit VA budget cuts in this resolution. So while the concern for veterans is genuine, many could be collateral damage or safety net cuts. The phrase slashing VA funds is speculative. The truth lies between veterans' core benefits aren't directly slashed, but many veterans will likely feel the pinch from planned Medicaid SNAP reduction. Calling it a betrayal, as Democrats do, is a value judgment, and the budget does prioritize tax cuts and defense over some social spending, which Democrats will say hurt middle and lower income class. Economic growth and deficit concerns says it blows up the deficit. Middle class taxpayers could pay the price or reduce services. These numbers, let me see, clash perspectives. So it's not history suggests that large tax cuts often do increase deficits. So the Democratic criticism has a factual basis, but at the same time, Republican leaders are offsetting some of the costs through cuts. So they are at least acknowledging the need to pay for part of the tax package. Net fact, the bill will likely enlarge the deficit, seeing GOP's rhetoric about fiscal responsibility, which is why Democrats label it hypocritical. They claim it's fiscally responsible. It's fiscally responsible is doubtful given the 3 million added debt, 3 trillion T, whereas a claim it's just for billionaires is somewhat exaggerated. Middle class households also benefit from extended tax provisions as well. So those are some of the facts. I did a whole long thing here. A really, really long thing here. I'm not going to go through it all, but Social Security and Medicaid fully funded, no cuts. SNAP facing new restrictions but not eliminated. Medicaid, significant cuts via work requirements, other safety net programs. WIC remains funded at robust levels. TANF and other welfare, they continue for now, pending any committee proposals. Education grants and student aid, $330 billion in cuts. Pell grants and K-12 funding are not immediately slashed in this bill. Again, you have to comply with federal law to continue to get your funding. Defense spending was increased. Veteran programs are maintained. We just broke that down. Social Security and Medicare, status quo preserved. Border security and law enforcement, protected or increased. There's a $90 billion increase in border security and law enforcement. That's great. We need safer communities, better public safety, infrastructure, and tax and transportation. Largely unchanged. They asked for a small $10 billion cut in transportation infrastructure realm over the next 10 years, so $1 billion per year. Nothing crazy. Deep spending cuts, deep reductions in federal spending, work requirements for benefits for Medicaid and SNAP, tax cuts extended, debt ceiling increased it by $4 trillion, climate and clean energy programs, repealing or curtailing certain clean energy tax credits, primarily around EVs. And that's kind of the budget in a nutshell. So, Patty Murray, how about you actually tell us the truth? You break it down in any way, shape, or form, the same as ChatGPT can. Honestly, we already talked about that one. Let's talk to Schoolhouse Scramble initiative. Hold on, let me transition. Schoolhouse Scramble, which is our segment where we talk about education and families. Parental Rights Initiative 2081. Here we go. So this is the counter to the opening segment. If 5181 passes, there's already, thank you to Let's Go Washington for already having an initiative pending. The fight will continue. The fight will not stop. A new conservative-backed initiative aims to protect the Parental Bill of Rights initiative, Parental Bill of Rights, from being watered down by Washington Democrat-controlled legislature. Initiative 2081 ensures parents have access to their child's educational materials, medical records, and school curriculum. Local impact: this keeps school from bypassing parents on things like gender-affirming care, mental health treatments, and school policies. If the new initiative passes, lawmakers won't be able to weaken parental rights without another statewide vote. Common sense takeaway: parents, not schools, should decide what's best for their kids. The initiative prevents politicians from quietly stripping parental rights without public input. So this is a story broken by the Seattle Times, covered by the Seattle Times, posted by Let's Go Washington. So again, love, love, love this. I will support the hell out of this. I will talk about this on every single podcast because this is so important. We don't really have any woke wire crazy headlines for the last couple days that I want to cover. So we're good there. I think I've already covered enough of the Washington State woke craziness. Uh, State versus the world. Again, we know our cost of living is crazy. Compare Texas and Florida, lower taxes, cheaper homes. California has a worse cost of living than us. But again, if we can figure out our taxes, we can lower the tax burden on our people. If we can lower the tax burden on our state, we can figure out actually how to spend our money wisely. Then that would impact every single Washingtonian's pocket. And would let's make things easier. Let's make buying a home easier. Let's make affordability better, not more difficult. And again, very lastly, your voice matters. This is where I take listener feedback and listener questions. Today's question is the Washington beverage deposit fee about recycling or just another tax? So other states with similar programs haven't improved recycling rates significantly. Long answer, and if it's just another tax, it looks like it, because it looks like it's a scheme when we could just invest in existing waste management that we already have. And why not force you to pay more? So if you have questions and whatnot, please send them in. If you want to make your voice heard, contact your representatives, and you can do so very easily. Go to ledge.gov, type in the bill 5181 or any of these proposals we talked about today, click oppose, or if you're for it, which I want to know why you're for some of these things, so please reach out too, and we can have that discussion. And you can see who your representatives are, who's directly there. You can put comments in. You can ask for a response to your comment. Shout out to April Connors. You are the only one that has ever responded to my comments on any of these opposition bills that I put in. And I put in many times that I do want to comment back. So thank you, April, for taking the time to comment back to your constituents. If you got a story or concern, send us a message. We might feature it next time on the podcast. Again, follow us on X and Instagram at EVERGREENRPT for real-time updates and to never miss anything about the show. And very lastly here, know the facts, demand better, take action, and see you next time right here on the Evergreen Report.